Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that, tries to cut through the noise and really figure out what's going on. Today, we're jumping into something that's, well, it's everywhere. AI.
Hmm.
It's in our phones, our homes. But now the big question is it coming for our music, our favorite songs? And maybe even more critically, is it coming for the actual jobs of musicians? Is this the end of making a living from music as we know it?
That's the heart of it, isn't it? A huge question. And our mission today is really to unpack that. How is AI really changing the music industry? We'll look at how it's being used, the big challenges, the ethical stuff that's popping up for artists, and yeah, what it all might mean for music as a career. Is that job, musician going away?
Right. And to figure this out, we've looked at a whole range of sources. We've got insights from like music legends, ABA's Bjorn Ulvaeus, Johnny Cash's daughter Roseanne Cash, which is kind of surprising, them getting involved. We've also got takes from musicians, commentators like Terrence Fisher, Rick Biero, some heavy-hitting legal analysis too, and even some pretty, let's say, controversial views from artists like Grimes. So yeah, let's dive in.
Let's do it. Because AI in music, it's not some future thing. It's
Right.
it's already here. It's woven into how music is made, how it's sold, whether we always see it or not.
It's kind of nuts, actually. These tools like Suno or Meta's Music Gen, they can generate entire songs, lyrics, music, everything, in seconds, and they can sound like famous artists. So if you're just listening casually,
Yeah.
maybe you can't even tell the difference. But if it's that fast, that cheap, does that really mean human artists are, like, facing extinction? Are their jobs really on the line?
Well, the sources we looked at suggest it's a very, very real economic threat. And this isn't just kids messing around. You've got professional music producers using AI for things like background vocals, filling out tracks. Even, film composers are using it to quickly sketch out ideas.
So it's creeping into the professional workflow.
Exactly. And it's backed by serious money. Major labels, big corporations. Timberland, the producer, he's even started an AI music company. They are investing heavily. The point is, this isn't niche. It's becoming systemic. It affects the whole music creation process, top to bottom, and that directly hits artists' income potential.
And you see the engagement, right? Over 1.7 billion views on YouTube last year for videos about these generative AI tools. That's
Yeah.
huge.
Right.
But here's a twist. Some really big names, artists themselves, are actually working with these platforms, which sounds kind of contradictory.
It does seem odd at first, yeah. Like Bjorn Ulvaeus from AB Bay, Roseanne Cash. They're collaborating with YouTube and Universal Music on an AI project. Ulvaeus said he joined up purely out of curiosity, basically to understand it better. His goal, he says, is to be better equipped to advocate for and to help protect the rights of my fellow human creators.
Ah, okay. So it's like get inside the tent to influence it,
Ah.
rather than just fighting from the outside.
Seemed that way for some, sort of shaping it from within. Composer Max Richter said something similar. AI brings opportunities, but also profound challenges. He sees his role as advocating for artists. They definitely see it coming and want some say in how it unfolds, how it impacts actual working musicians.
And the platforms, what do they say?
Well, YouTube CEO Neil Mohan talks about enhancing creativity while protecting artists. They have these three principles: responsible AI use, protections, scaling policies, trying to sound balanced. And Sir Lucian Grange at Universal Music, he talks about needing rules of the road, finding ways to balance the risks and rewards, hoping AI can amplify human imagination. But, underneath all that, there's this constant tension between the tech push and protecting artists' livelihoods, their income stream.
Yeah, amplifying imagination sounds great, but not everyone's buying the optimistic view, are they? A lot of artists feel like the floor is dropping out. Which brings us to the alleged darker side of all this. The displacement, the potential for deception, the profit motives that might sideline humans.
Right. And this is where it gets really worrying for artists trying to make a living and just get heard. There are these pretty serious claims about Spotify, for example, about them promoting what are being called ghost artists.
Ghost artists. Okay, what does that mean?
So the allegation is there's this secret program, Perfect Fit Content, or PFC, and it involves Spotify working with certain production companies to basically create loads of cheap, generic, stock music, and then Spotify allegedly puts this music onto its big, popular playlists.
Why would they do that?
Well, the claim is it's to avoid paying higher royalties to real, established, or even independent human artists. If they own or control the ghost music, they pay less. It directly impacts the money flowing to actual musicians. Less playlist space, lower payouts overall.
Wow. Okay, so give me an example of one of these alleged ghost artists.
The one that gets mentioned a lot is this act called the Velvet Sundown. alone, they suddenly had almost 500,000 monthly listeners, which is huge for an unknown band with zero history. No tours, no interviews, nothing.
500,000 out of nowhere.
Exactly. And people pointed out their photos look kind of weirdly clean, almost inhuman, AI-generated looking. And their band bio, just vague metaphors, nothing concrete, ticks all the boxes for potential AI creation, according to the sources.
And where does this music show up?
Allegedly, their entire catalog just appeared on massive playlists. Things like Vietnam War music, Good Morning, playlists curated by humans, supposedly. So if this is true, they're not just existing, they're being actively pushed by the platform's algorithm, taking up valuable spots.
Taking away streams and the money that comes with them from human artists.
Precisely. And the bigger problem, it's getting really hard to even tell what's AI and what's not.
How so?
Well, Rick Beato, the musician and YouTuber, he did this test. He used Apple's AI track splitter tool on a Velvet Sundown song. And the tool really struggled to separate the instruments properly. He suggested this pointed to artifacts you might get if the AI was trained on low-quality MP3s scraped from the web. If you can't easily detect it, how do you even manage it? How do artists compete when potentially AI-generated tracks are flooding the platform?
It's a huge issue.
Yeah.
And it leads to that fundamental question. If these are AI artists trained on potentially copyrighted human work without permission, should they even be getting paid? Especially when that payment might otherwise go to the humans whose work, whose very craft, made the AI possible in the first place. It completely undermines the artist's value and income.
And it potentially goes beyond just ghost artists. Our sources talk about broader profit motives. PFC, this alleged Spotify program, is described as possibly their largest profitability scheme, just designed to push more streams towards music that costs them less in royalties.
Okay, and there was something else mentioned about Spotify's CEO.
Yeah, this adds another layer, or at least raises questions for critics. Daniel Ek, Spotify's CEO, apparently invested $1 billion into an AI military tech startup called Helsing. Now, obviously, that's separate from Spotify's music operations, but critics and our sources point to it. They contrast this massive investment in AI defense tech with the struggles of artists on his platform who feel like their livelihoods are under attack, partly by AI-driven changes favoring cheaper content.
Especially when you remember Eek's original mission statement for Spotify, right? Something about unlocking human creativity, letting 1 million artists live off their art.
Exactly. And projections based on current payout rates suggest it would take, almost 75 years to actually reach that goal. So if AI is quietly replacing human streams or pushing payouts down, that 1 million artists goal seems even more like a fantasy. It really puts the whole job of musician in jeopardy.
Yeah, it feels like the ground is fundamentally shifting, which inevitably brings us to the legal and ethical mess surrounding all this.
Absolutely. Because how do you even police this? How do artists protect their work, their income, when AI can just learn from everything?
So what are the big legal fights right now? Where's the front line in this battle?
Copyright infringement is ground zero. There was this incident with the producer Timberland, who, remember, advises the AI music company Suno. He allegedly took another producer's beat, K-Fresh's beat, fed it into Suno without permission, and generated a new AI version.
Whoa, okay, so what's the legal argument there?
Simple, really. Taking a copyrighted song, feeding it to an AI for training that involves making a copy. The AI makes a copy to learn from in its neural network. And the U.S. Copyright Office is pretty clear. That kind of copying for training is very unlikely fair use. Basically, it's infringement. The AI is learning from stolen goods, potentially.
And are the AI companies admitting this?
Well, court documents cited in our sources suggest that companies like Suno and Udio have effectively admitted, or it's alleged they admitted, that they just took music, scraped it from Spotify, YouTube, wherever, without asking permission, which, if proven, opens them up to massive lawsuits from music publishers, labels.
But what about smaller independent artists? Are they just left exposed?
That's the huge worry. And it gets worse because there's this sort of ongoing infringement loophole. Platforms like Suno have disclaimers. You click a box saying, I own the rights to this. But realistically, anyone can upload, say, a Lady Gaga song, type some prompts, and get a new AI-generated track based on it.
So even if the platform has a disclaimer, users can still use it to infringe copyright.
Seems like it. It creates this two-pronged problem. AI companies potentially infringing copyright massively during the training phase, and then the tools enabling ongoing infringement by users after training. It makes it incredibly hard for any artist, big or small, to control where their work ends up or if they get paid for its use. Their income is constantly under threat.
So, faced with all that, what are lawyers and artists actually calling for? What's the path forward?
The general feeling seems to be pushing for some kind of coexistence. AI isn't going away. But, and this is the key part, they insist we have to deal with the wrongdoing that happens, address the infringement, establish fair practices. You're seeing class action lawsuits being filed on behalf of independent artists. They are fighting back to protect their rights and their ability to earn a living.
It really sounds like a fight for survival in many ways. The legal battles highlight just how real these threats are to musicians' jobs, their income, even their visibility.
Absolutely. Which leads us to the practical side. Okay, if you are a musician listening right now, what does this mean for you? What can you actually do? Because our sources are pretty blunt. AI presents at least three huge threats to your ability to make a living, to your actual job.
Okay, let's break those down. Threat number one.
It's what some call the race to the bottom. Think about it. An AI track might cost, what, $25, maybe $30? A human musician doing custom work might need to charge $500, maybe more, just to make ends meet.
Right, that's a massive price difference.
Exactly. So if a client, maybe for a small business ad, a YouTube background track, whatever, can get something good enough for basically pennies,
Yeah.
they're probably going to choose the AI. It puts immense downward pressure on what human musicians can charge. It fundamentally devalues the work and makes it really, really hard to sustain a career based on that kind of gig work.
Okay, that's grim. Threat number two.
The disappearance of entry-level gigs. Those smaller gigs, maybe at cafes, bars, small corporate events. Places where, historically, new artists cut their teeth. If the venue owner thinks, hey, I can just put on an AI playlist for way cheaper and maybe the vibe is good enough, those opportunities vanish.
So the places where you learn your craft, build a following, get stage experience, they just dry up.
Potentially, yeah. Especially in contexts where maybe the deep human connection isn't seen as the absolute priority by the person paying. It removes that crucial first rung on the ladder for emerging artists trying to build a career and an income stream.
Okay. And the third threat, you call it the myth of irreplaceability. What's that about? I mean, surely human soul, human feel. AI can't replicate that, right?
That's what many musicians want to believe, that their unique human touch is their ultimate protection. But our sources challenge this. We're not really in a talent economy anymore. We're in an attention economy. Meaning, if nobody sees you, if nobody hears you because you're buried by the algorithm or drowned out by cheaper alternatives, your talent, your soul, your feel, it doesn't matter economically. If you're invisible, you can't connect, you can't build an audience, you can't make a living. It's less about being talented and more about being noticed. That's the harsh reality affecting musicians' jobs.
Wow. Okay. Talent isn't enough if you're invisible. That's a tough pill to swallow. So given these threats, the price pressure, disappearing gigs, the attention economy, how do artists even respond? We heard about legal action, but what about creatively or strategically?
Well, there are different takes. Some, like the artist Grimes, have a really unconventional perspective, almost leaning into the AI disruption, but on her own terms.
Grimes, what's her angle on this?
She suggested things like having a specific AI section on Spotify, so you know what you're listening to. It's clearly labeled, helps manage quality. But her more radical idea is about copyright itself. She basically says copyright sucks and thinks art doesn't belong to anyone.
Wait, art doesn't belong to anyone. How does that help artists earn a living?
Her argument, controversial as it is that freeing things up, even letting people use her voice via AI, could lead to more creativity, a bigger pool of ideas. She feels the traditional music industry, with all its gatekeeping and control, actually strangles creativity. She points to early TikTok, how weird and diverse viral music was before it got more controlled.
So less control, maybe more innovation. But at the cost of the individual artist's ability to own and monetize their specific creation, that's a massive trade-off for someone trying to pay rent with their music.
It absolutely is. It's a very different model, questioning the very foundations of how musicians get paid. But okay, moving away from that radical view, for musicians looking for practical steps within the current, albeit changing system, our sources point to a blueprint, focusing on what AI can't do.
All right, let's hear it. What are the actionable steps?
3 big things. First, build your brand and your audience. AI cannot do this. AI doesn't have a life story, struggles, beliefs, values. You do. Musicians need to be creating content, not just music, but videos, posts, stories, sharing who they are authentically. That connection is your moat against the algorithm. It's how you build loyalty and ultimately support your income.
Be human, basically. Be visible as a human.
Exactly. Second, productize yourself. Don't just rely on playing gigs or getting session work, especially if those are drying up. Think about multiple income streams. Can you teach lessons, create an online course, sell merch, offer unique fan experiences, digital assets? Diversifying your income is absolutely crucial for stability when the traditional paths are becoming less reliable.
Okay, build a brand, diversify income.
Yeah.
What's the third one?
Start a YouTube channel. Seriously. Our sources really hammer this home. YouTube is powerful for musicians. It lets you create value, tell your story, build that audience we talked about, establish a legacy, and crucially, it gives you discoverability way beyond your local scene. It's seen as a vital future-proofing strategy. It helps you beat the invisibility problem.
So brand, products, YouTube, it's about leveraging the human connection and visibility that AI lacks.
Precisely. At the end of the day, AI might be cheaper, it might be faster. But that consistent human presence, your face, your story, your values, shared authentically, that's not going to be replaced. If anything, the rise of AI might make genuine human connection more valuable. That's the path forward for making a living.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've seen AI storming into music. It's a tool, yes, but also a massive disruptor. It poses very real threats to artists' jobs, their income, their visibility, challenging the very definition of being a professional musician.
Yeah, we've touched on everything from AI song generation and alleged ghost artists potentially displacing humans on platforms like Spotify, to the huge legal battles over copyright infringement where AI is learning from potentially unlicensed work, and finally, a potential path forward for human artists, doubling down on their unique humanity, building brands, diversifying income, and using platforms like YouTube to stay visible.
Which brings us right back to that core question we started with. Is this really the end of musicians as a job? Or is it just a radical, maybe painful transformation? And it's not just a question for musicians, is it? It's for anyone who listens to music. Your choices as a consumer, they really matter here.
They absolutely do. Think about it. How do your choices, what you stream, where you listen, how you decide to support artists, maybe buying a merch or going to a show, how does that shape this future? How do we collectively influence the balance between human creativity and artificial efficiency in the music that fills our lives? That's something worth pondering.